You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is analog from the Cold War days. There's no place for the waste, and yuccas refused. Vented dry cask containers become the only refuge.
Hello, everybody. Welcome
you
back
say
again.
You lead the charge with a federal hand. Would you vote Price Anderson or stand with the land? You call it advanced, but the cycle's well known. Still chasing
almost ready. Always takes me a minute.
Should have
My
stayed in the
apologies.
stone.
Being old, slow. There we go. It's called The Enrichment Man. You'll find it at James Lucid's site here on YouTube. Filmmaker, an artist, a musician. Does all the footage, creates all the music through AI. It's the only person I know in history to ever do it in this application. And he's the most prolific. He's produced more anti-nuclear music than the entire planet combined. And he's got just hit after hit after hit. How can you not like that? Yeah, if you look at the nuclear industry, the entire legacy is just rotten apples, isn't it? This is 1953, so they knew this was like a Hiroshima-Nagasaki dose. It's a lethal dose. His organs would have melted. He probably would have been dead in about 15 minutes. Because when you're hit with so much beam radiation, then they can leave a shadow. It's just the whole history of nuclear is just rotten to the core. Speaking of rotten to the core, man, I don't understand how Israel can't see through Benjamin Netanyahu's genocide. I just don't understand how the entire population has to lie, right? They have to lie to each other in order to justify what they're doing. It's extraordinary to live in that kind of denial. Let's get up on a bigger screen. Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Dana, I'm your host, who's slacking as usual. I had a rough day. We got spring showed up today finally. Let me get back in a second gear here. I'm Dana. How are you? Hope you're doing well. I'm in Canada. And you can call, text from Canada, United States, New Mexico. All lines are currently open. So the story was everywhere yesterday, and particularly today. And so I think what's going on is, first off, Israel's not going to attack Iran. Iran, if they take out Iran's nuclear facility, they're going to take out Israel's weapon facility, right? The nuclear plant. That's just, and probably take out their drinking water supplies, their energy supplies, their big ports. They only got a couple of ports. They're completely dependent upon that, shipping everything in, particularly for majority of their stuff is coming in by ships, right? Israel's never been hit before. They've never fought a real military, so they don't know what it's like to fight a real military that's gonna. And there's nothing they can do. They already proved it twice. But how does Israel live in denial that they're having a genocide? Right? Because, like, they don't care, but they care enough to lie about it, right? They're not going to come out and say we're going to exterminate them, which is not 100% true in their country. They're saying it on their national TVs. And you see all kinds of ministers and pundits and everybody else saying the same thing. They got everybody worked into a frenzy. And so if they attack Iran, it doesn't make any sense. Because Iran has sat in silence and took the beatings for decades. And the last two times when they said they were going to strike them back, they struck them back. Great time, big time. And of course, they came out and lied about it because they need to convince the world. I don't know why they... Well, they've never fought a military. They're just so used to being... You're talking about a culture or cult, whatever you want to call it, that's been kicked out of places for 2,000 years. How does that happen? Name another population that's been kicked out. Like, people don't go to that extreme for that long because they're bigoted and biased and prejudiced and racist. There's another reason, obviously, when you're doing that, right? And their current entire civilization is predicated upon that very thing, that they're hated. They needed their own country because everybody hates them. Like, come on, right? They're creating their own little paradox, right? This little dimension that they live into, but the rest of the world doesn't buy into it. I guess is whatever gets you to sleep at night, whatever blows your skirt up, so to speak. And then the entire population of Israel, my apologies, the entire population, well, say there's 7 million Israelis, Zionists living in Israel, I should say. But there's almost 2 million of them are Orthodox Jews. They're not Semitic, they came from everywhere, right? But 2 million or so are the ultra-Orthodox Jews, and they just believe in the Torah and the Talmud, which... and the same thing with the Muslim religion, where they hate any other religion, right? So does Israel, but they lie, they pretend they do, but ultimately amongst themselves apparently they don't. I don't know. So Iran's is not an equation that they're going to solve with bullying. That's what they're trying to do for the last couple of months. But since this so-called negotiations, that's not face to face. So how do you get past that? How are you going to have a negotiation? Saying they can't have any enrichment whatsoever, that's not going to happen. Suspicious explosions in Iran at their docks over the last month or so, which, according to the mouthpieces in the media out there, was strongly suggested Israel had a big part in that, that's how they work, right? They never attacked a real army. They're not just going to go out and attack a real army that can fight back. They're going to get pummeled. They've never experienced it, see? So they're in for a shock because it doesn't matter if Ukraine is there or United Kingdom or France or United States or whatever is there to protect them per se, because that's what they're asking for. They're not going to do it without this But Iran's not going to come out swinging on its own. If it comes swinging at all, it's going to have equipment from Russia and China. And they're going to get their ass whooped. And you can't get rid of their thousands of underwater or underground cities and mine shafts and that, right? There are roads and highways deep underground. And that's loaded up with 20, 25 years of very advanced missiles and drones that have, the drones will, and the missiles will send out 15 or 20 decoys ahead of them. And so the anti-missile batteries are going to use up a lot of very expensive equipment trying to stop the decoys. And that's what they've done the last 2 times, and very effective. But they can sustain at least 1,000 missiles a week for 3, 4, 5 years with what they already got. They're not going to stop building them if they have. And both of those countries are very dependent upon their ideology, their religious ideology, which are very clashing, stuff like that. Living on an ideology is disrespectful to the rest of the planet and the species, to the 8 million species. They couldn't care less. They don't care about anybody. They don't care about themselves. Their job is to support the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And the ultra-Orthodox Jews' ideology is the world will turn against them. All right? That's the ultimate in the Torah and the Talmud. The world turns against them, and God comes down and destroys earth, and only those in Jerusalem goes to heaven. That's the Torah, the Talmud, in a nutshell, basically. So in order for their prophecy to come true, we gotta hate them. And they're God's chosen one, but nobody's can prove that's what anybody said. So Netanyahu threatens to strike Iran is simply not true. It's not like he's striking Gaza where they can't fight back. Iran will fight back, and they're going to fight back hard. And it's going to, before there's planes land, the Israeli planes land in whatever Middle East country they're going to take off from, if there is an airport left when they get there, because Iran has all them targeted. They're expecting it. They're ready for it. That's the consensus anyway. And this is a monster. This is literally a monster. This is a maniac of biblical proportions. Sadistic. His entire legacy is attacking people that can't fight back with the most vicious weapons imaginable. And they got themselves somehow or another, after many generations, convinced now that the world hates them. And that the Palestinians are not human. It's not Hamas. It's got nothing to do with Hamas. They hate the Palestinian people. Women, children, sheep, whatever is in their country. Their ideology is to kill it all, so there's no future. So they're not fighting with somebody in heaven when they get there, so to speak. So they're no different than what the Muslims are. They're going to have all these virgins in heaven. The Israelis doesn't want to be fighting with Muslims in heaven for eternity, right? So their ideology is more or less kill everything, including us, before that moment comes, right? It's best that we all die. They haven't got the guts to do it themselves, right? They'll start wars in order to attack you. I have no problem poisoning you. Whatever it takes for the religion, they're willing to do it. So is the Muslims. Ultimately, that's the ultimate. They can't live in peace with the 8 million species and everybody else. It's all about them all the time, right? And it wasn't that long ago, Israel was the 4th biggest weapons producer. And so they got to test their weapons out on somebody. So they've been doing it on the Palestinians. I mean, they kept 5.5 million adult Palestinians in refugee camps and guarded them with guards with German shepherds, barbed wire fences, and starved them. Now they got the Gazas are starved to death there, and they're shooting at them when they're trying to get food. It's such a stupid, self-centered, egotistic ideology, right? They can't exist without massive controversies and war. Their whole ideology is everybody has to participate in the military machine because everybody wants to kill Israel. No one gives a shit. If Israel would stop being a prick and just relax for a while, the world will forget about them. And because they're shooting fish in a fishbowl in Gaza, they're not attacking anybody that can fight back. And most of the soldiers are coming from other countries. They're just Zionists, right? And they're losing heavy casualties this time, but the casualties they're inflicted is incredible. It's absurd. They flatten the whole country. Imagine if you flatten a quarter of their country, what the crying and whining and sniveling you have to listen to. But the Palestinians, of course, they're ostracized from the media on top of that for the 99%. Because the Israelis don't want the Jews and the Christians worldwide to see what they're really doing. And we've documented it, right? I mean, there was one soldier got on Twitter, I think it was 2014, because we covered it quite a bit with the story, where he got a picture of himself with his sniper rifle saying he killed 13 Palestinian children that day. Not 13 Hamas fighters, but 13 Palestinian children. And he had tens of thousands of likes. So they're not trying to kill Hamas, they're trying to kill the Palestinians, right? But I mean, they managed to keep 5 million people out, but they couldn't stop 10,000 Hamas, right? It's interesting, isn't it? Iran says they'll attack with severity if they attack their nuclear sites. Meanwhile, the whole planet gets brutalized by radioactive fallout. And the price of oil will go crazy because the Persian Gulf will get closed down. Netanyahu threatens to strike. I don't think that's real. Because why would the media pump that everywhere when they're still at the table? Why would Israel, right? And they've been doing the same tactic we've covered a bit over the last, since they started the so-called negotiation. And this is just, all the media worldwide is putting out this narrative. We're going to get you. Trump was saying it's going to be violent if you don't sign the papers, if you don't. Right now, all this posturing is desperation. They're not going to attack Iran because Iran is ready to punch back, and Israel has never been punched back. Right, that their morals will hit rock bottom immediately for extended periods. They have no water, no power. They'll have no marine facilities for unloading container ships. They'll run out of toilet paper in no time. Nobody around there likes them, so nobody's going to help them out. Only the British and American and the Zionists, whatever AirPac has locked down, which is pretty well every congressperson, Senate, and in Canada too, right? Everybody in the parliament's basically got a AirPac handler. Iran will take out their nuclear facility. They've already said that's how it's going to play out. You take out ours, we're going to take out yours. You're going to be in a nuclear wasteland with no water, no electricity, no wharf, and you're going to be getting hurt every day, all day. And there's nothing you can do about it. They got thousands of miles underground, missiles and silos and drones, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of drones. They got hundreds of thousands of older drones because the technology keeps changing. So I think all the posturing we're hearing is desperation for Israel. Israel, America, Britain, France, anybody's paying any attention at all knows Iran is not going to give up. They're not the same Iran they were 15, 16 years ago, right? They're one of the top 10 technical nuclear countries on the planet. Israel's assassinated a lot of their nuclear scientists. Just totally disrespectful to everything and everybody. There is just I the entire time down there. But they've been so-called looking for a fight. Iran doesn't want to have a fight, but now they got no choice, so they're ready. I can't see Israel survive in 5 days if this goes south. Nothing left to discuss with the United Kingdom if it demands zero enrichment. This is Iran. Is very vocal about that facet, and Israel and the United Kingdom and everybody else, the United States, wants zero enrichment. That's not going to happen. They'd be insane. And if they don't get a nuclear weapon, which I can't stand nuclear, obviously, but if they don't get a nuclear weapon, then they're going to look like Ukraine at some point in the near future. They're going to look like Syria. They're going to look like Afghanistan and Iraq after the military-industrial complex had their way with them, right? 5.5 million bullets a month, not counting all the other munitions. The soldiers were told to fire off many magazines every day. Didn't matter where you fired. It fired into something. And a lot of that was dirty bombs, depleted uranium, low-level radioactive material, Dolram. And all of that was basically to protect Israel. Remember, Saddam was attacking Israel. But that world order doesn't exist anymore. I see we got massive on the stream again tonight. The censorship on me is just absurd, isn't it? And all those guys that got pictures of me on the bunk above them for nighttime when nobody's looking around, they're so sick in their heads, eh? If the UK position is zero enrichment in Iran, it's in violation of the NPT, and the UK commitment as the remaining, which Israel is not, by the way, and the remaining JCPOA participant, nothing left for us to discuss on the nuclear issue. These are just Israel troops fire on starving Palestinians. They're emaciated, a lot of them too. These people here don't look too bad, but they haven't seen food in quite a while. Seeking food in Gaza. Well, they haven't seen toilet paper in 18 months. Trump's executive orders could endanger America's nuclear renaissance. This was really interesting, and we talked about this when we covered this story. We done a whole show a few days ago on this story exclusively, right? And we covered this take, what Americans need, and I got the World Nuclear News, which is a lobbying group for the nuclear industry, put out a podcast, like a 22-minute podcast, tonight. And I listened to it, and I was going to challenge it tonight, but that's going to take a 22-minute video. It's going to take 2 hours to challenge it. So I'm probably going to challenge it if I'm feeling well enough on Sunday. What America needs is confidence that any nuclear power plant built and operated in the United States is safe, secure, and ultimately beneficial to the American and host community's prosperity. Who talks like that? What America needs is confidence that any nuclear power plant built and operated in the United States is safe. Well, it can't be safe. All nuclear power plants have fuel pools. The fuel pools have no containment. The reactors are very old, so there's a lot of reactor cores in each fuel pool. They're all splitting atoms directly into the environment. And the benefit of it is when you shut them down, you see a decrease in infant mortality right away. But you'll see, if you've done the studies on heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia type spikes, you'll see these distinct spikes. And then when they're changing the fuel, if you tracked all the temporary workers they have when they're pulling the reactor core out to put in the fuel pool, they bring in like 1,000, 1,100 workers. If you track them over their lifetime and their kids, you would see catastrophic illnesses and diseases. That's why they bring them in, right? And there's nothing beneficial. They're 100% dependent upon handouts. They need 2 gas, oil, and coal plants dedicated to them, massive ones, that would probably produce the same amount of electricity to build them, to operate them. It's absurd how much resources just to build these sites. I'd like to see the light and power bill for the 15, 16, 17 years for that site. They have 2 dedicated gas, oil, or coal. Typically coal because it's cheapest. And this is what I mean. Like, if you try to challenge every one of their laws, we do that sometimes because I'm stupid. It could take you 2 or 3 hours to bring in the supporting documentation. Sometimes you got to like, I just done Harvard University's, Stanford University, MIT University again. I took their original presentations to Fukushima, and we audited it. And what I mean by that is when they told a lie that I could prove was a lie, I'd stop the video, chop it, go find the truth, right, and show that to you, and then continue playing the sentence. In some sentences, you have to stop 3 times because you told 3 lies in 1 sentence. So this is an industry that's completely out of control. Right, there's no benefit to it. As soon as you take the fuel out of the reactor core after 14 months and put it in a fuel pool, it's splitting atoms into your environment. And almost every nuclear plant is surrounded by farms because that's the easiest way to move the radiation fallout out of there. And at the same time, you're guaranteed to get your loved ones and your friends and your family sick. The industry is 100% sadistically sick in the head. Kind of like what you're seeing in Israel right now. However, the net result of these executive orders, coupled with additional impact of the other administration's actions to reform the governmental regulatory process to align with the White House policies to risk public trust in the nuclear energy. So what he's talking about is, if you're going to cut all the regulatory, and we covered this and we talked about this a few days back, right, a whole presentation on that. But if you're going to cut all the regulatory agencies with the legacy that you actually got, not the one that you present on Wikipedia, but the actual legacy that you got. Why would the investors, you got to and this was about tricking the investors into investing. That's what they were hoping to kickstart a nuclear renaissance. And I was asking the same question, like, how does that work? And so the poll tonight help articulate that, I hope. Is United States 300 gigawatts of new nuclear power by 2050, which is absurd to suggest. Blatant a Ponzi scheme. Yes, of course it is. And we can quantify that, and we did for the original presentation a few days ago. Because you see all the stocks rising, but you don't have a small modular reactor on the planet. So why would you invest, right? What's the point of that? NuScale just got approved for another license. They don't have the full application, but it doesn't matter anymore. They're like, yeah, call up the Nuclear Regulatory Association. Tell them we got, let me see, a 73 megawatt reactor. Nuclear, they calls them up, and then the media comes out today. They haven't put any application into the regulatory agencies. The whole thing is crazy. So they're just going to lose to fate, is what I'm saying. That's what we already said, but this is what this story is claiming. Downscaling the Nuclear Regulatory Commission staff and curtailing its political independence. It doesn't have. It's an Each Nuclear Regulatory Commission is appointed by the current administration, and that's really important when like The only people with the authority to make it illegal to poison you with anthropogenic man-made radiation fallout, is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And they've never done that. So this is why they're allowed to kill you in the hospitals and in the supermarkets from the farms that are surrounding all the nuclear power plants. It's insane. It's insane what they've done already for 80 years. That's insane. How they poisoned the whole biosphere, all freshwater, saltwater. Every square meter of land on the entire planet now is multi-million atoms of gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas, which means you're having full body X-rays on all the species in the biota, and the fungus and bacteria. Guess what happens when you get rid of the fungus and the bacteria? Oh, brutal droughts, brutal floods because the ground's not going to suck up water anymore, and brutal forest fires because the biota, the foliage and the litter hasn't broken down, which is what we've seen around Chernobyl. We're seeing that worldwide post-Fukushima. You kill the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen, and the carbon sequestering chain, and that's now manifested in mass species showing up emaciated, like the biggest animals on the planet, whales. Every species showing up in mass emaciated. Oh boy, we're in real trouble. And the same thing for the insects. You're not cleaning the insects off your windshields anymore, unless you're at the top of the mountains where there is still some insects hanging out, but it's not the diversity it was pre-Fukushima. But you're also seeing health consequences worldwide. And so there was a story came out not yesterday, but the day before, about gray whales. There was 9 or 10 gray whales showed up in San Francisco Bay, which they don't belong in, emaciated. They don't admit to that. They always try to throw it to ship strikes. But I'd done a presentation on this last week on the die-offs, and it's usually every couple of months I'll do a presentation on the die-offs. I'll gather up these unusual stories, and if we can prove that they are emaciated because the food chain is broken, and then it's easy to conflate that with Fukushima. That's just the most terrifying part. Just let me give you a little example of what I mean by that. And it wasn't. So this is plutonium-239 dispersal based on 20 days post-Fukushima, but it's not based on real statistics that actually happened. Right? They left the inventories out. These are basically these models. Like there's 4 reactors went immediately with 8 reactor cores at the top of each building, and there's double fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. So there's 36 reactor cores. They're gone. So this Neptunium-239 dispersal, that's a pretty color, isn't it? It covers the whole planet in 20 days, and 239 decays to plutonium-239 in about 2.5 days. There's 10 half-lives. So it does it 10 times, and it decays to another nasty, horrifying, monstrous isotope. It'll do that 10 times. But Neptunium, brutal energy on top of that. So these 2 models, you're covering all the freshwater, all the seawater worldwide, and that's just a fraction of the inventories. You had all these reactors melted down and reactor cores, which were undeniable, right, to the academic community. They decided to cover it up. And they control the media. They've done a great job on it. But it was a big mistake. And so there's desperation now because there was 660 gigawatts of solar power came online. And nuclear is very fragile First off, because we've been here since Fukushima educating the population of the entire planet. I'm censored incredibly, brutally heavy tonight. That don't mean people don't watch my video. It doesn't mean it doesn't get uploaded to other sites. It doesn't mean that the ones that makes the decision don't watch this stuff, because that's who we generally target by proxy, is the policymakers and the investors. You can keep them away all you want from me. You can hide me away all you want. But somebody's going to say, hey, have you ever listened to Durnford? The bastard. That's what they usually call me, is the bastard. I'm not a bastard. I'm a good person. Korea wants to win hundreds of nuclear projects. But that's what they call me on the blogs. And somebody will eventually say, well, who's the bastard? And somebody will say Durnford. They won't say Dana Durnford. And boy, somebody will say Dana. Who else could be the bastard that I am? Let's face it, I'm not a nice person, right? The nuclear industry has created a lot of people like me. I'm not a very nice person because I like all the other people besides the nuclear industry, and I like all the species. I'm not a nice person to the nuclear industry. Very cordial to everybody else. Even the nut jobs. The trolls, they troll me. My detractors don't have a narrative. They just call me names. So that's not a... You already won that battle, say, when you do that. Korea wants to win hundreds of nuclear projects, and so does everybody else. What the hell is this? This is just a piggyback off... I was assuming that this is a piggyback off of Trump's useless narrative. How the hell are they going to build 300 gigawatts? They don't have supply chain. They don't have the manpower. It takes about 4 years to train the nuclear worker for construction because they're so anal. Everything is triply inspected, for instance, that goes on the site. They're very anal about every facet because, 90% of the money gets sucked up in administration, let's put it that way. With up to 700 reactors planned worldwide, what are they talking about? I never heard that one before. This is a new one. This is another one trying to artificially inflate nuclear companies so they'll buy stocks in it, right? Like 2 administrations ago, the South Korean administration was phasing out nuclear. Then the prosecutor got elected by saying that there was no nuclear meltdown at Fukushima, basically. Remember that? I actually got that coming up. Let's just get through the story first. Korea's nuclear industry faces a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Boy, if you're going to build 700 reactors, you're not going to build them all this year. You got lots of time. You can frig the dog until the next administration. You can still sail into the construction. But must overcome significant challenges to lead in the competitive global market. There's not a competitive. You got Rosatom, you got France is building the reactors, right? You got South Korea. And who else is building reactors, right? There's the CANDU reactors in Canada, but we haven't built one for 30 years, so we don't have that manpower anymore. I mean, the workers they got now are doing a refurbishment, not building a nuclear site. And if you just look at what happened to the French government in United Kingdom, with the reactor they're building there, it's filled up with rats. And rats will chew the shit out of the wiring. Most of that wiring, because that's the biggest construction project in human history, most of that wiring is in pipes that are covered up by cement now, so they can't get at it. And I think they're in for a rude awakening in the very next couple of years. They're a long way away from it. They went from originally $4 billion price tag to $57 billion. And they're far from finished. A total of 307 reactors are currently proposed worldwide. So the number 700 they're talking about is adding on 300, which is not proposed worldwide. That's what they're proposing in the United States. but they're not proposing all of them are going to be, like large reactors, which are typically 0.8485 gigawatts of a gigawatt. If they're going to do small modular reactors, we done the math on that there a few days back, didn't we? They're going to have to build like 12 a week or something. It's absurd to suggest it. So what are they doing? They're going to rob the unsuspecting investors because all the media is out there screeching to buy stocks in companies that don't even have a product. And 400 potential new reactors. So they just changed the narrative. We went from 700 reactors to a potential, 307 reactors proposed worldwide, which is proposed for the United States by a declaration that I can't see coming to fruition because there was 660 gigawatts of solar power came online in 12 months last year. He was supposed to go 50 to 90 gigawatts of geothermal, and the nuclear industry it's in its death throes right now because of the revolution in storage and renewables. Canada closed 750 wind and solar farms 2 years ago because they were going to compete with nuclear. Right? And then he spent $10 billion on refurbishment in Ontario. And now unless you're going to build a small modular reactor that's 240 feet tall, 50 feet taller than Fukushima, which was, a large, almost a gigawatt reactor. To build a 300 megawatt reactor that runs on plutonium mixed oxide fuel, high-assay reclaimed uranium plutonium fuel, which is illegal in Canada. Trump's declaration this Friday or last Friday, whatever it is going to make it illegal apparently for them to produce the mixed oxide fuel. Though they tried to build that at the Savannah River site, and he spent like $16 billion trying to build a facility, and they gave up on it. And there was like $2 billion worth of stainless steel and everything else, the pipes and aluminum they gave away to different universities because they had gave up on trying to build a plutonium mixed oxide facility at the Savannah River, which is the second time, right? And they had gave it up. Again, 90% of the money went to administration, was ripped off. We see this over and over and over. The World Nuclear Association is a lobbying group, so they don't matter. They're just going to bump up everything to make it look good. To try to trick the unsuspecting investors into putting their money there so it can be stolen by the 14 biggest financial institutions on the planet, which are working hand in hand. This is cooked up by UN at the Conference of Parties 29, right? Last year. And they buy millions of shares in small modular reactor companies that don't have a reactor. No small modular reactors. And so the investor sees the stocks rise like crazy. They throw their money in there. 2 weeks later, the financial institutions cash out and take the unsuspecting investors' money. And this is allowed to happen. This has been going on post-Fukushima nonstop. But now we see this new scam over the last couple of years in particular, but over the last 5 years heavily. And now we see this narrative, you can't have data centers. They just came out of the blue. We got to get data center. We need more nuclear at the exact same time. That narrative showed up. They were married to each other, right? But there's other ways to make energy. Let them make their own energy. The plan includes they don't have small modular reactors. Why are we wasting all this energy and time and monetary? Why are we putting all this effort? Why are we changing all the laws? Why are we allocating all this money that if we done it to geothermal, our problems are over in about 4.5, 5 months. If we took 10 universities and dedicated them to cracking the last 2 miles of geothermal, where you're going to get down and hit 700, 800, 900 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, which is hotter than gas, oil, coal, or nuclear, then you wouldn't have any problem. The problem solved. Like the problem is you got to drill the last couple of miles. There's a couple of companies got solutions that are the most likely solutions, right? And they don't. If you put them companies manufacturing those pieces. So what you're talking about is They use, and you can buy the stuff off the shelf for the most part if you got the money. It's 25,000 pounds per square inch water jets, so it cuts the rocks as you're down the last couple of miles. You don't have to worry about drilling. And then you have pneumatic hammers that are crushing that up, and you're using water and vacuum to suck up the crushed up rocks that are sliced up by 25,000 pounds per square inch, and then the drill bit goes down through that. But nothing. It's got to be fusion, or it's got to be small modular reactor, but it can't be anything else. Oh, and by the way, nothing else exists. Oh, batteries. You can use batteries, folks. We'll get you some batteries. Here's $2 billion. And when that catches fire, then nobody ever wants to see batteries again. Well, there's no other way we can store it. That's their normal narrative. Wind and solar can't have storage when there's tons and tons of air storage, compressed air storage, where you store mass air down in mine shafts. Like those big turbines, they're out there for $300,000 that all they do is compress air. So you dig mine shafts and compress your air down there. And you can save the heat with lava rocks and sand and salt. Can contain 600, 700, 800 degree Fahrenheit temperatures for months. So you can reclaim the heat from compression. And when you're ready to unpack it to drive a turbine, then you can use the heat that you reclaimed, that you already reclaimed from the compression. I mean, this stuff is already worked out. No. The only thing that's important is Israel and nuclear. And Israel's going to get their nuclear. Nuclear is really dangerous, but Israel is going to be allowed to blow up a nuclear facility because it's Israel. And everybody hates Israel because Israel has made it a point to get you to hate them. I don't hate Israel. I feel sad for them that they're so compartmentalized and so distant from having a life. Their whole ideology is about supporting a cult known as the ultra-Orthodox Jews. This is a cult. They don't read anything on the two books. In Canada, typically, as long as you're not a Jew, we call that a mental illness, right? As long as you're not a Zionist or a Jew or an Israeli, we call it a mental illness. Oh, but if you're an ultra-Orthodox Jew, it's okay to be a nut job, right? Oh, it's okay. You're Jewish. Oh, well, that's... Glad you told me that. I was about to say something. And everybody gets you to fight about the stuff that doesn't matter and ignore the stuff that do. And nuclear matters. It really, really does. The plan includes constructing 300 large-scale reactors with a capacity of 100 megawatts to meet growing energy demands for AI and data centers, which are the exact same thing. They're the same ones, right? There is not going to be a data center without AI heavily involved in it. It simply doesn't work that way anymore, right? But to what end? We gotta go crazy because a couple of corporations want AI and data centers? It doesn't make any sense. It would make sense if there was a meteorite coming and they never told us, and they want to build a small modular reactor so they can live deep underground and survive it, right? That would make sense, because they don't need oxygen. They can make oxygen with a small modular reactor 200 miles underground, say, for instance, right? They have all the energy, and we already, we have robots now that'll blow your mind if you've seen them. Whatever you're seeing, multiply it by 50 intelligence, 50 times more intelligence, and the military's already got it. With U.S. President Donald Trump recently announcing plans to quadruple nuclear power capacity to 400 gigawatts from the current one, like they got 100 gigawatts now, so you're talking about 300 gigawatts. Well, so they're being very slick, suggesting that the whole planet is on board when it's just one country that doesn't have a hope in hell of producing 300 gigawatts in 25 years. How the hell is that going to work? Like there's no supply chain. There's a nuclear plant, as you've heard many times, I'm sure, has 1 million corporations are making the parts for a nuclear plant. And anything goes wrong, you got to abandon that part of your country. And you can't drink the water or eat the food for a million years. So why not use geothermal? Am I being irrational? Now, if I was a Jew, you have to listen to me and consider it, right? You're like, oh, Jesus, he's a Jew. We can't say nothing to him. he must be right. Yeah, he's Israeli. He's a Zionist. He must be right. But because I'm not none of that, then Dana. Censor him, get rid of him. He doesn't deserve to exist. The total numbers of planned reactors worldwide is expected. Oh, he must be an anti-Semitic. None of the people in Israel are Semitics. They've only been there for a few decades. Most of them came from other countries. They weren't born, their parents weren't born in Palestine, that's Palestinians are Semitics. So what Israel is doing is anti-Semitic to the Palestinians. And as soon as Benjamin Netanyahu, the war is over, he's going to get arrested and go to jail. So he's a big incentive to keep the war going. Anyway, keep the war going, just kill them all. Women, children, babies. They're insane. And then they want to have a nuclear war with Iran, blow something up, and they're going to blow Israel's nuclear plant up. And nuclear sites where they got their weapons. They're like they're from a different world. They don't care about anybody. They'd kill every species on the planet as long as they get their own way. They couldn't care less. Nothing matters, only they're ultra-Orthodox Jews, right? The total number of planned reactors worldwide is expected to reach as many as 700, significant increases in the current 439 operational reactors and 67 under construction, and then the 300. So, like, that's pretty slick what they've done with the numbers. But that paragraph, they started to come clean. But see, most people only read the first paragraph or so. And so they might invest. They're like, honey, there's going to be 700 new reactors. We should think about buying stock. That's what they're hoping for. That's what is written that way. So the 700 is if America builds 300, and counting the 400 plus they already got. But they got a lot that's going to turn off in the next couple of years, and that's why they came up with the number 700. Only a few countries possess the necessary technology and infrastructure to build and operate large-scale nuclear plants. Korea, United States, France, Russia. China's too busy doing their own thing. Russia's too busy doing their own thing. France can't keep up with the reactors they got. America hasn't built... They barely built 2 reactors in the last 40 years. South Korea is only got a couple under their belt since the new administration. Japan hasn't built a new reactor in forever. And Canada's pathetic. I know, I'm from Canada. Look at me, look at how pathetic I am. Look at this picture. This is the Czech Republic. They got a few farms around that place. Man, these people are just sick and twisted. Why are nuclear power plants surrounded by farms when the fuel pools? You see the tall skinny stack right there? That's where the radiation from the fuel pool is hemorrhaging up through every day at all nuclear plants. When you see those, and it's always the same picture, it's surrounded by farms as far as you can see. It's usually a lot more farms than what you see in there. But you'll always see farms right up to the property lines and completely surrounding these sites. Total coincidence that 98% or more of the nuclear plants worldwide are surrounded by farms. But so why did South Korea show that picture? South Korea got nuclear plants. Because they wanted that image out there, see? They're not as stunned as they looks. Let's go backwards. They're just on the 20th of this month, 9 days ago, one of the politicians that's running for the presidency in South Korea got fact-checked. So the Moon Jae administration pushed for a nuclear phase-out, but Yoon Sung-yeol, who's arrested for invoking martial law because he lost control, is no longer the president, reversed course, but his administration is still there. So that's what they're talking about. But they don't bother telling you that prosecutor, which I'm going to cover coming up in a minute, Kim Mundo said during a debate on TV less than 2 weeks ago, 9 days ago, came out and said the most absurd, said that even if a nuclear bomb like the one dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki is detonated around a nuclear plant, the part of the reactor would respond automatically to the explosion and would not be damaged or malfunction. So he said you can basically detonate a nuclear bomb right by a nuclear plant and you couldn't damage it. That's simply not true, right? That's the furthest thing from the truth. Even a nuclear bomb wouldn't affect him. So he was pro-nuclear on a whole different scale, right? Same as Yoon, who's just got arrested 2 months ago for sedition, for invoking martial law because protesters wouldn't stop protesting, like Justin Trudeau down in Canada, right? But he got arrested down there. He said there was no radiation leak, at Fukushima. Even though the government acknowledged there was a radiation leak, I mean, the buildings are completely gone. Well, he's not the only one that wouldn't acknowledge a radiation leak. This is mainstream media pretending that building didn't even get damaged. But he was claiming there wasn't any kind of releases whatsoever at Fukushima, and we covered that, and that's why we have that particular headline from back before he got elected, when he was running for the presidency. Utah's new advanced nuclear reactor for research won't produce energy. This is a guy who's self-taught engineer that's going to build it with a design that's apparently not even proven. Valar Atomics. I never heard of them before, I don't think. Have we covered them before? It's very unusual for me to have anybody sneaking up on me. Like companies, right? Bear with me. She's frozen up. Oh, there you go. We got her. May yield important research information. So, like the French hang on a second. Let me do that again. Advanced nuclear reactor for research. This is about making isotopes. This is not a small modular reactor. This is not producing power. Right, that's what I wanted to talk about. May yield. So they build these sophisticated devices, but they won't figure out how to make geothermal, how to get the extra couple of 100 degrees by digging a little bit deeper, the extra couple of kilometers. But they got endless institutions. Every university has to dedicate a certain percentage to the nuclear industry. And the nuclear industry, it's shocking how many facets to the nuclear industry there really is. To turn an advanced reactor on American soil by July the 2nd, 2026. So they're going to build an advanced research reactor at a university, I guess by the sounds of it, in less than a year, 12 months. America's 250th birthday. So they're all giddy, they're all full of nonsense. And this guy, allegedly, is a self-taught engineer, the guy who owns the company. Is a self-taught engineer with an unproven design. But now that Donald Trump, President Donald Trump of the United States, has removed all the restrictions that the nuclear industry was self-imposed, like they're going to lose. They're going to lose the trust of the population because they got rid of the regulatory agencies, and everybody's already a little bit skittled about the nuclear industry. Most people don't understand it and have been well indoctrinated by propaganda their entire life, but they're still subconsciously, you can tell they're worried about nuclear whenever you talk to people. They don't know, well, I don't know nothing about it, but I know it's not that good, and you'll always hear that kind of connotation. Naval group rolls out France's fourth Barracuda-Class nuclear submarine. France. This is the stupidest thing imaginable. You build these massive ships, underwater ships, put nuclear weapons on them. We've had quite a few of them sink from different countries over the years, which is catastrophic to the only planet we got. And there's a lot, we know that they're legally allowed to eject radiation directly into the ocean, and they have any kind of issues at all, they can jettison. Many of them used to be able to jettison the reactor core directly into the ocean. We know they've taken reactor cores from these submarines and put them on freighters and scuttle them into the Antarctic. We know there's 18,000 dumps in the Arctic itself. Not just the Soviet Union, but Russia and what they've done in Mayak and everything else. There was 160 nuclear submarines with weapons sometimes scuttled up in just one spot in northeastern Russia. Just ran up on beaches and tied up at derelict docks that they have no way of decommissioning them. The entire legacy of this industry, why are you putting nuclear weapons on board? You can't use it. You're never going to have a war where you got to use nuclear weapons. It's not going to happen because nobody can cash their checks anymore. So therefore, it's not going to happen. There's no incentive. We don't live in that idiot, like back in the days when the concept of nuclear, the first decade, 2 decades, there was huge secrecy because of the hideous nature of radiation fallout, radiation releases from the production of like the Manhattan Project, 450 billion gallons directly in the soil at Hanford. I mean, that's an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet more than once. We know what the French done to the French Polynesians to get their hands on nuclear. We covered that last show, the show before, I think it was. Extensive amount of documentation about what they done to the French Polynesians and to Nigeria, not counting what they done in Nigeria to the uranium mines, the high-grade uranium mines, where they caused a civil war for 50 years, destroyed the whole country so they could have cheap uranium for their nuclear power plants. They poisoned everybody in the French Polynesians, every insect, every bird, every animal, and destroyed the nursery of that part of the Pacific Ocean for marine life, right? It's just such a stupid industry. It can only exist by destruction, right? The Grasse is the 4 to 6 submarines intended to replace the French Navy's Ruby-class, equipped with advanced propulsion, stilt, and firepower that it can't use. Stilt doesn't matter. It's all nonsense. You don't need. Let's put it this way: if you want to have your toys, go have your toys, which is still stupid because you're using up all the precious metal on the planet, and you're tying up incredible resources, and then the maintenance on these things are absurd. But don't make real nuclear weapons. Just make dummy ones and put them on your stupid little toys, and go out and pretend that you're important because you're not. You're not going to use it. No one's going to use them. We don't live in that. We don't live in that time anymore. This is about feeding a military-industrial complex. It's not about real protection or anything like that. You can fake it like Israel does all the time, and creates themselves for most parts, powered by a nuclear propulsion system. Of course it is. 325 feet long, 29 feet wide, and 4,700 tons, whatever, 10 million pounds or something. Asteroid with a power of 1,000 nuclear bombs moving toward Earth. I was like, okay. The date of it was May the 29th. So this came out today, but the asteroid went past Earth on May the 24th. Asteroid with the power of 1,000 nuclear bombs, like Castle Bravo or like the Soviet Union's biggest bomb was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki bombs. Castle Bravo in the Marshall Islands was equal to 1,000 Nagasaki's plus going off at the one time. And for some reason, you only count them in one bomb. If you count it in kilotons, all the detonations, you'd be at 3,800 plus Nagasaki plutonium bombs released on the planet. Nuclear Regulatory Commission to host questions and answers on Monticello nuclear plant. Well, Nuclear Regulatory Commission just got deregulated. Not that they were a regulatory agency, right? Agency anyway. They, by namesake only, we haven't seen actual nuclear, anybody being held accountable. Let's put it that way. They're not like police where they're handing out tickets. These guys are not handing out fines, not putting anybody in jail. They're appointed by the administration to keep everything running forth, because the nuclear industry will have a seizure if they don't get their way every second of the day. Just like Israel will have a seizure if they don't get their way every second of the day. They're like adults with the mentality of a 10-year-old first time going into Walmart or somebody wants everything. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission will hold an open forum with a question and answer session next month, discussing the safety performance of Monticello Nuclear Generating Plant in 2024, which, like, they had such a big accident a couple of years ago in the Mississippi River. They didn't tell anybody for almost 3 months. Then he came out and said there was only tritium, not tritium-3H, but just tritium was released. And don't worry, it was released into the soil and staying still there. But the reality of it was, it was 4 feet of frost, and so this stuff ran straight down the hill, less than a couple of 100 feet into the Mississippi River, which feeds tens of thousands of farms downstream. And nobody was allowed to have a conversation or a debate. There was never any dissenting voices. It was despicable what they done. It was just absurdly despicable. And it happened on a high pressure system, which meant it couldn't be just tritium. 3H, by the way. There's no such thing as just tritium from a nuclear plant. It's tritium-3H. A day of mourning for nuclear tests to protest Pakistan's 1998 nuclear test in the region. Free Balochistan movement. I'm not sure what that was all about. Organized global demonstrations highlighting environmental damages, health crises, and human rights violations linked to the test. Yeah, the plumes from these cover the whole planet. Nuclear is the only emission, and the fuel pools all do it every day worldwide. There's 1,000 fuel pools that are making plumes that are covering your planet all day, every day. Invisible plumes. You can't see it or hear it or smell it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it or perceive it. So this is a plume model from not a model, but a study from France of Fukushima after 23 days, and is 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels per cubic meter of air of cesium-137. Cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet all day. So you had an invisible snowstorm. So instead of snow, it's radioactive atoms. And each one of them are pulsing energy almost 600 feet a second. But an atom, you can put 200 million on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So think how freaking tiny, excuse the language, tiny one is. It's supposed to be just irrelevant, right? But no, it pulses energy 600 feet every second for long past the human experience. And that's why we have there is real global warming. It's caused by 80 years of emissions uncontained, and the industry knew this was going to happen. That's why there was this heavy, for many decades, because they were able to track it, but we didn't appreciate the decline of the species and the implications of it. Global demonstrations highlighting environmental damage, health crisis. 80 years of emissions into the environment. Japan put Fukushima soil in Prime Minister's flowers beds to show it's safe. How does that work? Anybody know the science of that? Just take a flower, plant it there, and then all the bags are safe, I guess. Isn't that how that works? There's 16 million bags missing. We done a show about that last night. There was 30 million, not 14 million, one-ton bags, which is 5 rows of traffic. These are one-ton bags, 2,200 pounds, 1,000-liter bags of radioactive fallout at very high concentrations per kilogram. There's 1,000 kilograms in a bag. Each kilogram was over 100,000 atoms of gamma. They didn't check for alphas and neutrons and betas, and they really didn't check for the gamma. This was symbolic. They picked up the bags in 3% of Fukushima prefectures, targeting farmland where they want to grow food and communities. And then by saying that we scraped up the topsoil, we put potassium there, and therefore it's safe, go ahead and grow food, and then they walk away. And this is the sickness of this. This is a sickness this industry has, that it thinks it's entitled to destroy every species, and because they're academics, then they're untouchable. And they're right. But that's what I mean, it's a sickness because you don't leave any future for anybody or the species. You destroy everything with equal contempt. And this radioactive fallout attacks everything with replicating cells. So it's a nightmarish issue. Gizmodo. So this story is by Gizmodo, which is supposed to be a science technology company. So they write the stories, they send it to all the popular media. Gizmodo is very popular. And they come out with the same propaganda. Now, we covered this yesterday. The core is experiencing partial meltdown. Like, what are you talking about? So, this is what I mean. Like, there's so many people in the industry in a position to come out and cut everybody's throat. And, like, Gizmo has a pretty big audience. So they're going to cut a lot of people's throats. Cores were at the top of the buildings, by the way. Just let me give you a quick example of Fukushima. So that's reactor 4. The fuel pool and the reactor cores are at the top of the buildings. That building is actually missing. There is no building. So there was 8 reactor cores missing in this one, 9, and 9 reactor cores missing in that one. Each of them are equal to 100 Chernobyls. They were pure uranium, pure plutonium. And they're completely gone. And the one to your left, reactor 3, this is reactor 4 behind me. I know I'm always covering up the... I should have put the numbers... I should make it do pictures and put reactor 4 at the top so I don't always have to blink out. So this is Gizmodo. What's going on here? Blah, blah, blah. Big censorship tonight. Some extra hate on Dana tonight. So we're used to it, actually. It's normal. I'm actually hated more than the Jews are when it comes to the nuclear industry. Hate. I mean, you got 18 reactor cores are lost into the environment. This is on its own, each one of them on their own is a pulse event. Each reactor, without not counting the fuel pools that are missing the reactor cores, just a reactor core, a single reactor core, there's 9 missing from each of these buildings that were released into the environment, which is catastrophic to everything, the food chain and everything with replicating cells. All 8 million species have been significantly impacted, right? Because the plume, this is a 23-day model of the radioactive fall, not model, but study of catastrophic numbers. And we have so much documentation of that. The second worst nuclear accident in history. How can 36 reactor cores, and each one is 100 times Chernobyl, be the second worst? When a single reactor core was worse than all previous nuclear meltdown reactors combined that we know about. like Windscale, Santa Susana, Hanford, 3 Mile Island, blah, 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 Chernobyl, blah, blah, blah. Each of these are equal to 100 Chernobyls because they're pure uranium, pure plutonium. Unlike Chernobyl was a brand new reactor, you have 4 decades of reactor cores at the top of these buildings because you don't have a repository, right? Brutal censorship tonight. Is United States 300 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2050, in 25 years, a blatant Ponzi scheme, is it meant to rob the naive investors' life savings? Well, it's not, because we're doing a poll. I'm just trying to invoke some thoughts in people's heads that haven't been around here before, maybe, right? But what's going on is, in the first 5 hours of that story of Trump signing, basically banning the Nuclear Regulatory Commission from interfering whatsoever in any kind of crackpot nuclear scheme, the stocks, 20, 25%, 30% of all the big nuclear companies immediately skyrocketed, which is most likely the 14 biggest financial institutions have went in and gobbled up millions of stocks in each company because they knew that this thing was going to go out there heavy and investors would show up and they can just 2 weeks' time sell it and rake in a nice profit. But they don't have a supply chain. They don't have the workforce. They don't have, as Dan and Asana says, the wilders, which is so important when people don't appreciate how important that actually is. The second worst nuclear accident in history. This is Gizmodo, a huge technology blog that has no science whatsoever foundation to their story. The nuclear accident itself didn't cause any direct radiation deaths. My goodness, man. You vicious, cowardly thug. So there was, first off, in the first year, there was 865,000 extra cancers. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. It was 13,646 out of 38,200 children with thyroid tumors over 2 centimeters, which is the same size as their thyroid, which means they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives. And you can't be doing that unless you're producing radioactive stem cells, because you can't have a yin without a yang. You can't have a muscle shaker like a gamma without a beta in your bones, so to speak, right? For every cesium-137, there was 14,200 children. 14.2% of every 100,000 children that are born needs open heart surgery to correct congenital heart malformation. And it's not just, there's 4 out of 10 children born, males, are born with 1 testicle. You know, if you, it's just absurd to suggest there was no adverse side effects. This is a huge blog, Gizmodo, making wild allegations that nobody got hurt, nobody died, and everything is hunky-dory, just so they can, the nuclear industry can send them. I came in as a guest comment. I named myself Silly Man. Clearly nothing got out of Reactor 3 or Reactor 4. I put that picture there. I don't know if it stayed there. Most likely they would have took that down. False alarm. Koeberg nuclear siren activation during a routine maintenance. This is the only nuclear plant they got in Africa. It's on a fault line. It's got significant damage to the Wigner effect to cement, for instance, and the containment, which is around 1,000 pounds per square inch. It's very brittle at this stage. And the nuclear industry, now, Klaus Schwab actually was instrumental from the World Economic Forums, had significant prominence in getting that to happen there, to be built back in the day. I know a few activists from around that area. They've told me some crazy stories over the years. The sound of a nuclear power station siren can send chills down the spine. So first off, for the siren to go off, there's a whole protocol. You don't just walk in and turn a button, turn a key, or push a button. It doesn't work that way. It's digital. There's a special operating system for it all, dedicated just for that. So it's not something that somebody's randomly going to set off. And if you did accidentally shut it off, they could easily, or turn it on, they could easily have shut it off immediately. They didn't. The sound of a nuclear power station siren can send chills down the spine. If they have a nuclear meltdown, the worst history, they'll never use the sirens. They still won't use those sirens. The sirens are there to lull you into complacency and living within 20, 30, 40 miles of it. And it was brought in as a concession after 3 Mile Island. When 3 Mile Island happened, the people came back that ran away. And they were the smart ones. And then they came back, which was stupid. A lot of people ran to the nuclear site to see what a nuclear meltdown looks like. I'll never get over that fact, right? That's crazy. And so at that time, there was no sirens, right? And so that was one of the concessions to keep nuclear going and cover up what happened at 3 Mile Island. Because when people came back home, their pets were blind or dead. They should never went back in the house. Once you see a dead pet after a nuclear accident, you just run away, man. Be happy. Your health is more important. Siren 913, part of the Koeberg's African's nuclear power station public notification system, was inadvertently activated. It doesn't work that way. You got to have, only certain people can have access to that, right? And there's 3 different or 4 different people before you can actually make that thing work. Their maintenance routines caused the sirens to emit a brief alarm tone, although no emergency were taking place at a nuclear facility. Maintenance routines. Now, maintenance routines, that's not a simple mistake. That's a very complicated mistake. So somebody with pains of conscience set the siren off and everybody else covered it up by the sounds of it. The siren was one of over 80 devices strategically positioned around the facility to communicate critical information of a nuclear emergency plan. That if you do have an event, they're never going to use it. So who knows, maybe it did. I'm very skeptic whenever I hear the siren was accidentally set off, because I know from previous stories we've covered over many, many years that it's very difficult to accidentally set off these things. There's a lot of people got to participate, and they're trained not to do that. Constellation to test emergency sirens at the Peach Bottom Nuclear Disease Factory. Constellation is one of the CEOs was on the World Nuclear Association, World Nuclear News, so-called blog, showed up there the night before we went live. I listened to it, and they were talking about a merger that they're just about to make. There'll be the biggest nuclear energy company on the entire planet once they make the merger. So when they're in that critical moment, because they don't give a shit about anybody, but the investors, they don't want to spook the investors. Full volume tests of emergency warning signs surround Peach Bottom Clean Energy Center. They changed the name from Peach Bottom Atomic Power Station to Peach Bottom Clean Energy Center. Oh, it's a clean energy center. That's so they can have the signs everywhere, and the media has to refer to them that way. And now nuclear becomes clean subconsciously. Some serious MK Ultra going on right there. They don't have anybody in the entire industry that has a redeeming quality that the world looks at and says, he's a pretty nice person. He's a reasonable guy or a girl. They don't have a single person in the entire industry. The warning sirens, that's because they're morons. You don't get to work there unless you're just a sadistic, twisted little demon or a moron. The warning siren system consisted of 97 sirens. They're not a single to evacuate, they always put that in there, but to turn into your local propaganda machine. And like a good little if you can hear the sirens, you're in danger zone. You're always getting radioactive fallout from the fuel pools. They can't contain it, right? HMS Victorious submarine enters $560 million refit. $560 million for a refit. You're not sure it's not a new one? No, they're multi-billion dollars. Nuclear deterrent. What's that on the ship they got there blocked out, I wonder? Why did they block out the docks, alongside the docks there, right? See those tunnels up there blocked out? Or missing? Weird. They live in a different world, eh? Like you can't get a job doing that unless you're really a gullible person, right? You gotta 104, which conducts nuclear deterrent patrols to safeguard the nation's security. How is a nuclear war going to safeguard the nation's security? Anybody want to friggin' answer that? How does a self-centered nuclear war that only the elites and deep bunkers can survive going to serve national security? How's nuclear weapons going to serve national security? And who's going to invade shithole Britain anyway? I love the British people, mind you, but the government and the universities and the media in Britain are just retarded and revolting, right? The float phase has seen some extremely innovative engineering solutions and several in-water firsts for a ballistic missile submarine. Right, they have public relation firms that will write this stuff in order so that the people, the families and that, the people involved in this shit, that's how they justify it, see? I don't give a frig about reality. They need to keep the slaves thoroughly indoctrinated that are going to be, the people that are going to be working on it, doing the refit, the suppliers. It's all about dressing something up so that people just don't question anything, including reactor depressurization, which means they're going to be venting. So they're venting into the community. So you just start off evil and don't turn it off after. Britain's $57 billion nuclear nightmare is full of rats. It's full of rats everywhere. You got no way of controlling it. And they can't claw back all the damage because the infrastructure, like you're talking about, enough cable, like power lines to go around the planet a few times, chewed up by rats. And you don't need to chew everything up. You just need a few key places chewed in where they can't get access to it. You get a couple of 100,000 extension cords and just bypass everything, I guess. I can't see how the site can work. We've never seen anything like that before, right? And what's the power bill there every month again? At this big stupid disease factory. Beset by huge delays, environmental disputes, and cost rises. 57 billion, was it? Yeah, 57 billion. It's not over budget. That's like, you guys are idiots. The most expensive to the point where it's now expected to become the most expensive project of its kind ever built. No, it's the most expensive project ever built. Not just nuclear. They use more cement, enough cement to go to Rome, build a sidewalk to Rome. And only the best of the best cement, too. Because of the neutron bombardment, it's going to break it down pretty quick, right? Fight continues against proposed nuclear waste facility. This is Canada. And so there's some pushback. I don't like the Canadian Nuclear Waste Management Organization 23, 24, 25 years ago had $26 billion. And today they have $26 billion. They didn't grow a cent of interest. Now, this is the industry and the government we're talking about. Do you really think that the industry and the government got $26 billion, no intentions of building a repository for at least 50, 60, or 100 years, and you didn't grow any interest? You didn't invest any of the money? How much interest are you going to get a year on $26 billion? That is paid for by the ratepayers. That money was created by the ratepayers, is taken off their bills every month and put into a bursary to eventually deal with the decommissioned nuclear waste. And they haven't grown a nickel of interest in 23 years. So they're in court right now, and they're being. They won't have they won't allow freedom of information request, and so they're in, because the ratepayers have paid for this already, and that's where the money's to. Then we should be allowed to find out what happened, why they didn't grow any interest, and if they did, why didn't they declare it, and where did it go? And if that happens, most of them will be arrested, I would imagine. They got no intentions, right? The nearest surface disposal facility, this is a different one, will be located close to Ottawa River. It's not close to the Ottawa River, it's on the Ottawa River, right? And what they're going to do is like a 70-story mount. And so the river is just 120 feet, 150 feet away. And it's got to run downhill to get to the river, a really steep hill, as it is already. And now they're going to make the mount 70 feet taller. So every time it rains, what happens, I wonder? Will be located close to the Ottawa River upstream from both Ottawa and Montreal. The facility was originally slated to be completed in 2028, and the project has been delayed by legal challenges. They spent over $20 billion on Yucca Mountain in litigation alone. The Canadian and Quebec government do not believe the facility would create any significant adverse environmental effects. Yeah, well, that's always going to be the pro-nuclear narrative, isn't it? They're pro-nuclear. And then the dissenting voices are the control opposition. I'll never have a voice in this conversation unless I do what I'm doing here, but that's not going to be effective for policymakers, right? We explain that Canada is failing to live up to its own promises, adding it is violating United Nations declarations. Now, United Nations don't have any authority here in Canada, right? But they win over the population. Now we're going to fight over a corporation that's structured like McDonald's. We're going to fight over that corporation's declaration that has no sovereignty in Canada or any of the other 195 countries that are participating in it. Because why are we participating in it? We didn't have a referendum for a population. They're an absolute, they have no right to exist. United Nations has no right to exist in the capacity of interfering in policies in every country. It has no authority. They're not a regulatory agencies. The river is sacred. It's a source of life for millions of people in Canada, Quebec, and Ontario. Not just for the indigenous. It runs all the way down to the St. Lawrence. So it affects the entire east coast of North America. Not just for indigenous people, but for everyone. Oh, yeah, we were talking about the grey whales earlier. I forgot. I got off sidetracked, I guess. Big surprise. There's a story a few days back there I was reading, and I got headlines going eventually all the way back to like a month ago, that the entire population of grey migratory whales, which is thousands, remember there's 10,350 of them already died post-Fukushima. Majority of them were officially emaciated. We've been covering it since Fukushima. But the entire migratory population currently are emaciated. Wrap your mind around that statement. And a very tiny birth rate, because they're supposed to be calving, right? Very tiny birth rate. A total failure of for the whole history of studying the grey whales. But I've never seen anything like this where the entire population is emaciated. The migratory. So you can't, it's not just going to affect the grey whales, right? We have unusual mortality events for almost every single species you can name. I have it documented, collected, and I produced, oh yeah, there you go. Hang on here. So this is my site, right? So you can see the killer whale there. That whale is so emaciated. That was in Belgium, which doesn't get killer whales, by the way. That's so emaciated. But that's a 3-hour video on basically emaciated whales, seals and sea lions and stuff like that. It's unbelievable. If you're not familiar with the subject, you might want to be, because it's in your best interest. Quebec municipalities, 147 have passed resolutions in the town councils expressing grave concern over this project, including all of the Montreal municipalities. Why would you put it right alongside the water? Because that's what they always done. That's their old shit plan, see? Because it's not going to be low level, it's going to be high level waste, and some of it's going to melt down at some point, and that's their old shit plan. Everything ends up in the big estuaries, rivers, lakes, and streams where they put these stupid disease factories. 99% of all the radioactive material that would go into the facility is waste, not produced locally. So it's going to be shipped in from all the nuclear plants across Canada. Maybe some from America. Known the Canadian government. It won't surprise me. And it's at a place where they had 2 nuclear meltdowns. One of the first known nuclear plant meltdowns on the entire planet, which is so-called Chalk River National Laboratories, right? It's a government laboratory run by 2 American companies, by the way. Lincolnshire County Council Scrutiny Committee recommends that withdrawal from the nuclear waste service option in Gayton-Le Marsh. So they were on a speculators list where they were getting bursaries for hosting the nuclear industry to come in and check out to see if it was suitable to put a deep geological repository in, which involves a lot of drilling and stuff, right? Councillors have moved to pull the plug on talks to bury nuclear waste in the open countryside, which is surrounded by farms as far as you can see in a satellite from every direction, and it's near the coastline. And I think that place there, it actually went out under the ocean too. But everything gets repackaged at the surface. So the council voted no. I don't know. It's unusual in the United Kingdom for anybody to oppose nuclear industry. They like it though, because they don't really want a solution, right? Everything is sitting at the sites, splitting atoms into the environment. That seems to be what they want to keep doing. That way you're guaranteed to exterminate all the species and all humans through diseases, right? Because that's why we refer to these as disease factories, because the fuel is all still splitting atoms for millions of homes and businesses with no containment. This was formerly known as the radioactive waste management, right? And then now they call itself nuclear waste services. And that's because we make fun of them. Like, why are you calling yourself a management? You never managed a single thing. We don't have any proof of them managing anything. And so then they changed their name, I guess, because we bullied them for so long. It's unacceptable for us to sit here and subject our communities to a decade and a half of uncertainty. Yeah, when you get money, they're throwing money at you each year. But the thing is, like the Canadian ones where they just pull the plug and say, okay, well, here we go. Too late now. Vietnam to invest in 11 schools for nuclear energy workforce. 11 schools. So, first off, who's going to build the reactors in Vietnam? And it's going to take 14, 15, 16 years to get a single reactor when you have all kinds of better solutions. Geothermal is everywhere. I don't know. For the development of Ning Thong, I'm not going to pronounce anything, 1 and 2 nuclear power plants. Going to need a workforce of 3,900 people to build the plants. I need 2,000 individuals in the university postgraduate levels, 1,800 at the college level, and 670 who will be newly trained abroad at universities at postgraduate levels. They're going to go out to different countries with nuclear and get an education, are they? And poison their country forever. By going nuclear is humanity's only hope. No shortage of scumbags, is it? And to show you this picture here, the biggest construction site of the entire planet that probably will never be started up because of the rats. Powering a rising world's population to a decent standard of living is something only nuclear reactors can do, says argues Tim Gregory. He's not arguing with no. He's got no one to argue with. No one's arguing with him. That's his assertion. That doesn't mean it's true. There are 3 parties when it comes to global warming, which is caused by 80 years of emissions from nuclear plants that never goes away, and it's bioaccumulated to the point now where you have this absurd amount of radioactive fallout pulsing energy at the speed of light every second from 80 years of emissions. From every source you can imagine, all the dumping into the ocean, all of it's now coming back to haunt us, right? First, the hard right, which says it isn't happening, which is the control opposition, even if it is, that we can do nothing about it. Then there's the far leftist Luddites who would smash all nuclear generating stations. Like, what are you talking about? Only wind turbines or wave power? No, geothermal, and back it up with wind and solar. I mean, there's 660 gigawatts of solar last year. So if you take geothermal, back it up with wind and solar, and then you can back up wind and solar, store energy with compressed air storage or water batteries where you got 2 aquifers, you pump water up to the top when you make both of them. Or you can store heat in lava rocks. We got lots of lava rocks. Greenland will be happy to sell you a couple of 100 million tons of that. There's sand. You can store energy in sand. 700 degree Fahrenheit temperatures for months. All of these technologies, there's many different ways to store energy, see? I think we identify around 20 crazy cool ways. There's a lot more than that. Finally, are the centralists who knows perfectly well that only nuclear can save us. This book will become their Bible. He's a nuclear scientist who worked at Sellafield, so he got the credibility of a snake, of a Komodo dragon. I'd rather pet a Komodo dragon than sit there and have a coffee with that guy. He worked at Sellafield. That means he's a degenerate monster. Sellafield is surrounded by farms as far as you can see in a satellite. Imagine hundreds of millions of people they poisoned and destroyed the health of from that facility alone. Right at the reprocessing site. That's an insidious thing to do to our planet. He has a serious problem defending his convictions that nuclear is the answer. Radiophobia. Oh, well, it's harmless like a banana and a potato chip, is it? Radiophobia, if you understand nuclear at all, your radiophobia is the right way to be. This is why they got 97 sirens around the Koeberg nuclear plant. Not because of radiophobia, because radioactive fallout is the real thing. You get an atom in your body attacks for the rest of your life with white blood cells. So imagine what happens to the birds and insects and mammals and animals. Superficially, this terrorist seems well-founded. What an unlikable person, to write something like that. There have been some major nuclear power plants disaster. The biggest nuclear disaster is the nuclear bombs, for starters. The 1,000 nuclear fuel pools that are splitting atoms directly into your environment with no containment. It's the same boring garbage can diagnosis, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima. And Fukushima is a real deal. 36 large reactor cores released directly into the environment in 5 days. That's not up for debate, but the Soviet Union's biggest bomb, this is 2 reactors at Fukushima with 9 reactor cores were at the top of each of the buildings. The buildings don't even exist anymore. That's 18 massive reactor cores there. There's 2 more with the same attributes. There's 36 reactor cores are gone. Scary. Each one is scary. Each one is capable of wrecking a planet. And radioactive fallout. Radioactive fallout never goes away, and you've been releasing it for 80 years. The French study on radioactive fallout got it right. So when you look at these 2 buildings there, you lost the inventories. Not some of it, not a little bit of it, not half of it, not 3/4 of it. You lost 18 reactors. So if we don't count the other 2 with the same attributes, where it's 36 reactors, just say 18. Well, just a single one. This plume model is only based on venting, but it's based on 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. This is a study. This doesn't do it justice. That's the crazy shit. It contaminated all the water, not just the biggest body of water on the planet, but all the water, right? This is only based on 24 days right there. Together, they destroyed the fate in nuclear as a safe generating system. In the industry, like, if the truth came out of a nuclear, there is no fate in the nuclear. There's this manufactured fate, manufactured consent, so to speak, right? Manufactured fate by people like this who wrote these stories. This, argues Gregory, is madness. After Fukushima, only 1 death can be directly related to the radiation. No, there was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Where did all the cancer come from? Like, the health consequences are... There was one street in Fukushima City, a shopping street, in a city that's incredibly radioactive. Should have been abandoned 300,000 people. But just this one street had 7 people drop dead on it in 1 year, in the first year. 6 out of 10 children with diabetes, which they were expecting in the Fukushima children. 13,646 out of 38,200 with thyroid tumors, for goodness sakes. It means radioactive hormones for the rest of their miserable life, and radioactive stem cells for the rest of their developing lives. It's going to be really, rather, the developing couple of decades are going to be brutal. And it used to be 1 in a million. 14,200 children out of 100,000 children need open heart surgery for congenital heart diseases, which is absurd, right? Neonates and infants need open heart surgery, newborns. But there's heart problems, and liver problems, and lung problems, and respiratory, and pituitary, and thyroid, and adrenaline. And you'll see Alzheimer's and dementia, and autism, and diabetes, and Down syndrome, and schizophrenia. Mental health issues are, when you go to your hairdressers for the rest of your life, go to a different hairdresser as often as you can and ask them, are they seeing an increase in Down syndrome and autism and Alzheimer's and dementia in their regulars? And they're like, girl or honey, you wouldn't believe it. We were just talking about how many people that used to come here all the time or now don't even know who we are. They got... This argues Gregory is madness. What he's doing, what he's claiming, and the lies he's telling to justify a nuclear industry is that these are criminals of the highest order. They should be in jail for the rest of their lives. And don't worry though, Brian Appleyard, the so-called journalist, has award-winning feature writer, and he was awarded a CBE for service to journalism in 2019. So he's better than everybody. He's better than the truth. So unless he says it, it's not freaking true, see? Ignore Dana, only listen to Brian. And Mari Yamaguchi, the entire cover story of Fukushima comes from Associated Press with Mari Yamaguchi. And I got to go spider-bot it out to 1,800 medias. And writers will pick it up. That's another 1,800 medias will spider-bot that same paragraph, the same author, and the same headline at the exact same time worldwide. All the biggest media will just regurgitate, no matter, there will be no fact-checking to prove a point. So how are you going to prove? Well, the headline that I found it on was to prove it's safe. And when you went to the story, it says to prove a point. I guess they got some blowback in that and they changed, went in and edited it out maybe. Japan Prime Minister uses radioactive Fukushima soil in his garden to prove. How does that prove a point? Like, the only point they're proving is the industry is completely untrustworthy and is dangerous. This is a picture from the mainstream media in Japan, and they're growing food, harvesting food with no safety gear on whatsoever. So that means they're harvesting it right alongside of thousands and thousands of one-ton bags of brutal radioactive fallout, it doesn't make any sense. And they're within sight of multiple ongoing nuclear meltdowns. So the emissions are perpetually coming out of there. This is so disconnected from anything pre-Fukushima. It's just like the Twilight Zone, but infinitely worse. This is real. This is genocide. Every kilogram of this is a genocide machine. Unmitigated evil, eh? That's what we're seeing. Perpetually unmitigated. We're at the last story anyway. The move is intended to demonstrate the safety. How can growing flowers, so if I grow flowers in those bags, that's safety? That means it's safe? So they got rid of any kind of validating science whatsoever, any kind of technical, and they don't even call it radiation soil, they just call it soil. The initiative follows guidelines established by the Environment Ministry. So the very people that are supposed to protect you, that you hire to protect you, are doing the most to cut your throats and poison you and your loved ones and your friends and your family, destroy your community and your country. And that was endorsed by, of course, the degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency, who's supposed to be a regulatory and a promoter. So let's just take every criminal coming out of jail and turning him into a cop. That's the same thing, right? He's a criminal and now he's the cop, right? The International Atomic Energy Agency, of course, is UN. And they got, and often they'll come at you with UN, the WHO, UNSCLEAR, ERPA, the IPRC. And these are all UN. So you got UN, 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 each backing each other up, and that's the evidence. It's not just control opposition. It's no up. It's they created it and own it, right? So far out of touch, the International Atomic Energy Agency providing assistance with the Fukushima decommissioning process. They didn't go there until August of 2023. And they picked up a $19 million check when they got there because Japan is the third biggest donor to the International Atomic Energy Agency. 2023, Japan began discharging the treated radioactive water from the plant into the sea. You can't treat radioactive water. It's not like a water filter in your fridge or in your home. Or the filter becomes because you have fuel particles, you start a chain reaction in the filter, or you get a lethal dose just peeping around the corner trying to see it. Because you're talking about pouring water over melted chunks of reactor cores and then sucking up the fuel particles. It's like we're talking multiple sieverts per liter. So 3 or 4 sieverts will melt your organs. You're talking about tens of thousands of sieverts after an hour in the filter. How do you change that filter? And it can't. What happens is you're putting in 10 sieverts, but you're going through something that now, after an hour, is 10,000 sieverts. So when it comes out the other end, it's hundreds of sieverts. It goes in at 10 sieverts of gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas. They acknowledge 2.2 sieverts of just beta in one story. We have many, many different documentations. You can't filter it. To reduce the risk of the accidental leaks, is it better to pump it into the ocean, all of it, or just have a few leaks? Who cares? It's nuclear industry, like Israel. They can do whatever they want. Nobody's allowed to argue with them. And to make space in Nutjob's brain. Trump warns Netanyahu off Israel strike. No, he didn't. This was deployed to try to pressurize Israel or Iran into giving up their enrichment. Iran is not going to give up their enrichment. It's suicidal to give up their enrichment. What are you going to do with them? Alrighty. Brutal censorship tonight. It's my last show of the week. I wasn't going to do the show, and I was like, if I don't do the show, I won't be able to sleep tonight. I've done a show. Okay. And so James Lucid had put out a song yesterday, or 22 hours ago, No Bugs on the Glass. And he dedicated it to Albert Mitchell, who died last Thursday, a week ago. And it was really sweet, man. It was really cool to do. I was thinking about asking him to do it, right? But I was like, nah, I can't do it to him. I know he always would say hi to Albert. And Albert's been here for so long, right? Everybody knows Albert. No Bugs on the Glass. And so very appropriate story. I just love the footage that he used. He created all of this himself, by the way, with AI, which is unbelievable. And I'll see everybody on that's James Luce's site. And we're going to play that song. I'm supposed to be in the video here. Hang on a second. Where am I to? There we go. I'm going to control the audio. And so James's audio is really good, But because I'm controlling the beginning of each song, you might get like volume. I'm getting better at avoiding that, but you might get volume. Now I gotta stop the video, make sure I'm in 1080. Looks like I'm in 1080. It's a great song. I hope you stay around and listen to it because it's a really good song. I'm going to stop the poll after. Sounds great on headphones, eh? Crazy. And we'll see everybody on... Unless there's emergency, like an earthquake or an event, I'll see you on Sunday. But I could get bored on tomorrow or the next day and do a show too. It's hard to say with me because I never stop working. So have a great night. Have a great weekend regardless. Hugs for you and your loved ones. And see you in the next one. Take care.
Rode out of making the sky gone pale, rain on the shield like a soft bent nail. The engine knocked like a bottle on courses, paint on the blacktop and tires roll. Used to count the guts like ticker tape June. Now the windshield reads like a dead cartoon. Flat, no grit, no tick or drum, just a flickering line in a copper tone. No bugs on the glass, no dance, no sound, no wings like sparks when the sun goes down. Where the dusk once sparked with the firefly rise, now it's guardrails and glass with no trace of flight. Across the savannah, wide and slow, river teeth jagged where it eddies slow. Flowers lean from gravel and shade, but the sky held flat like it never prayed. Maybe it's runoff, maybe it's law, maybe it's fallout nobody saw. Maybe that drift from the muck's melt sway took the color and carried it away. No bugs on the glass, no twitch, no dive, just a freeway breath trying to feel alive. Where swarms once danced in the amber light, now it's guardrails and glass with no trace of flight. I run these lanes through half-left towns, past silos bent, the earth gone brown. No bugs on the glass and none to send, just tires on tar.